Okay, in the first part of this, I ended with the use of a startling fact or statistic, and I told you this can be extremely successful. Uh, how about this? Um, each day, 22 veterans commit suicide. Whoa. That is looking around the room, looking around our average classroom at Troy University, we have anywhere from 22 to 24 students in a classroom. Imagine this whole classroom being gone tomorrow. Because if you can think of that as a classroom like that gone each day, that is a huge number of people. That is an awesome statistic, and I don't mean awesome in the good sense. Awesome in oh my gosh, I never knew that. That's horrible. Okay. Then we have another one that I'm not going to recommend, and that's the use of humor. There are so many different kinds of humor, and we see how many stand-up comics actually fail in that profession. It's not an easy thing to do unless it's a joke that people have heard and you know they find it humorous, or it's a humorous situation that you got into. But usually, um, usually it doesn't go over as great as you think it's going to go over. And let's say you tell a joke and nobody in your audience laughs. Where do you go from there? This is tricky. You have to be able to recover. I have seen professional comedians deliver an initial joke and nobody laughs. And this is what's called dying on stage, because it's difficult for them to pick up the pieces and move on. The audience already thinks you're not funny from the very first joke that you told. So I'm not going to tell you not to use it. I'm going to tell you to beware. Tell the joke to somebody else and see if they laugh, okay? Then there is something else that works well as an attention getter, and it's to perform a task, an action, a video clip. I'm going to, in this informational speech, I'm going to allow you to use 30 seconds from a video. But that's it. 30 seconds tops. And that doesn't mean you have to use 30 seconds. You may find 12 seconds that are really spectacular. And that's fine. Don't get to the point where you're relying on video clips all the time, okay? I want you to develop a way to speak an attention getter and get the audience's attention. So perform a task. Let's say you're going to talk about giving resuscitation. I hesitate. I don't call it mouth-to-mouth anymore because I'm not sure anybody is still using mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. But you know that when you take lessons in resuscitation, you use what they call a resusci-Annie. It's an actual model. So let's say you walk in holding this person, fake person, under your arm. That gets attention. Just by doing that, it gets attention. And you can kind of stand it up next to you and say, "Hi, I want to introduce you to Annie." And this is how I learned how to do resuscitation. So that's something to do. Or if you're talking about basketball, walk in dribbling a basketball. Maybe toss it up in the air, catch it, that sort of thing. I love basketball. Okay, let's move on now. Let's talk about the listener relevance statement. It's a statement of how and why your speech relates to or might affect your audience. That makes sense, right? Just one sentence. You're going to need to have this information if you ever expect to da 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 da. If you intend to be a lifeguard this coming summer, you're going to need to hear about resuscitation. Okay? One sentence that explains to them why they need to listen up. Sometimes your attention getter will serve this function. Therefore, it might not be necessary to include an additional listener relevance statement. So listen to what you're projecting as your attention getter. Does that also answer the question? It might not. If it doesn't, let's stick one of those listener relevance statements in, okay? Now we go to the speaker credibility. Sometimes a little harder for people to come up with in their early speeches. This builds your authority on the subject and convinces your audience that you are a reliable and credible speaker. Now, if you were introduced to come up and give your speech, the person introducing you is probably going to tell a little bit about you, what your background is. I'm a professor, Dr. Serapin is a professor who specializes in media effects and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So you basically already have a speaker credibility statement, but we're going to assume that somebody has not given your qualifications when they introduce you. Sometimes your attention getter will serve this function too. Therefore, it might not be necessary. Anytime you use a statistic, fact, or quotation, remember to provide citations. You are proving that you researched your topic. So this is also a very good thing. And in your speech, in your informational speech, you must have at least 2 citations of something. Got that? 2. All right, moving along to slide 6. So we're back to the thesis statement. You must preview your main points. Be straightforward. This also serves as your thesis statement. This is the roadmap. Very few of you had a clear thesis statement. As I said, go back to that thesis statement PowerPoint. Go over it. There are lots of examples in there. You can get online, you can Google how to write a thesis statement for a speech, that sort of thing. But what do you do after that? You use those main points in the body of your speech. You say, first, we're going to talk about, and then you tell them your first main point, then go into that. Then you have another transitional statement that says, next, I'm going to tell you about blah. That's your second main point. You do the same thing for your third main point. Okay? Slide 7. We're going to get into a conclusion here. Signal the conclusion. Review the main points. And then a clincher. That's a call to action. We'll talk about clinchers later. But at any rate, you signal the conclusion, and you can do this with just 2 words. In conclusion, you might hear the audience go, phew. No, I'm kidding. You won't. These are short speeches. Everybody has a 4 to 5 minute attention span. That's not a problem. Maybe it'll be 3 to 5 minutes. I haven't decided yet. At any rate, you signal the conclusion, and then you review your main points. This is what you say. We have talked about A, which is your first main point, B, second main point, and 3. Okay. Let me give you a general thing that people hear all the time. In a speech, you're going to tell your audience what you're going to tell them. Then in the body of the speech, you tell them. And then in the conclusion of the speech, you tell them what you told them. Okay? This may sound like something you've heard a million times before, but it is true. Tell them what you're going to tell them. That's your thesis statement. Then tell them. That's the body. Then tell them what you told them. That's the conclusion. The conclusion is usually no more than 5% of your speech. So go ahead and do the same thing. Take the minutes, multiply by 60 for the seconds, and then take 5% of those seconds, and that's what you can allow yourself. So basically half of the length of the introduction. A little bit more on this, and then we'll finish it up. Signal conclusion verbally and non-verbally. Verbally, say something like in conclusion, not in conclusion. In conclusion. Non-verbally, you slow down. This is how you indicate it. You slow your speech rate. You pause. You step closer to the audience. You get a little closer. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what I told you, or in summary, or to summarize what we learned today. Remind your audience of your main points. So in conclusion, we have discussed the 3 most common types of eating disorder: anorexia, bulimia, and obesity. That is the second time that you give your thesis statement. You give it in past tense. So the minimum number of times you're going to give a thesis statement is twice. That's the minimum number, okay? Okay, now we'll stop here and conclude.